In the annals of history, there are moments when courage and destiny collide. Among these stands the legendary Battle of Little Bighorn, a story of valor, survival, and the untamed spirit of the native warriors who defended their land. As the sun sank beyond the distant hills, a young warrior named Waterman reminisced about the time when bravery was not only defined by triumph but by the fierce will to survive against overwhelming odds. With only 2 survivors left to recount the tale, Waterman takes us back to that era, inviting us into a world where courage meant sneaking into enemy territory under the veil of night. It was a time when every heartbeat echoed the anticipation of battle, and the line between life and death was blurred. Join us as we dive into an epic tale of loyalty, betrayal, and the relentless struggle for freedom that forever changed the course of history. Before we embark on this journey, don't forget to support our channel by liking and subscribing. Every gesture helps us share stories like these with more people. In those bygone days, it was customary for young warriors like Waterman to form small war parties to confront unfriendly tribes like the Shoshone. For these native warriors, returning home with a prized scalp or a few captured ponies was more than a victory. It was a badge of honor and a pathway to respect among their people. Acts of bravery were deeply admired, such as sneaking into an enemy's camp at night, cutting a tethered horse loose, and riding away into the darkness. This daring feat was a testament to a warrior's courage, celebrated through songs and stories. Waterman, having lived through 22 winters by the time of the Battle of Little Bighorn, recalls his experience vividly. He was one of 5 Arapaho warriors who participated in this battle. 3 of his companions have since joined the spirit world, leaving only Waterman and Left Hand to tell the tale. Knowing that their time is limited, Waterman shares his story honestly, recounting events just as he witnessed them. The story begins at Fort Robinson, where the Arapaho received rations from the U.S. government. Along with 4 other young warriors, Yellow Eagle, Yellow Fly, Sage, and Left Hand, Waterman ventured out on a scouting mission to find Shoshones. Their journey led them into buffalo territory, where they encountered a small group of Sioux warriors. The Sioux welcomed them warmly and invited them to join an upcoming sun dance ceremony in their village. However, the Sioux soon grew suspicious, suspecting that the Arapaho were scouts for the U.S. soldiers. As they reached the Sioux camp, the situation escalated. The Arapaho were captured, disarmed, and accused of being scouts for the U.S. forces. Waterman and his companions were held under close guard throughout the night. By morning, however, the situation shifted. Two Moon, a Cheyenne chief, intervened upon learning the true identities of the captives. He explained to the Sioux that the Arapaho were their long-standing allies, not scouts for the U.S. soldiers. The Sioux reluctantly returned their weapons but continued to monitor their movements. Waterman and his companions remained in the Sioux camp, witnessing the rituals and daily life of the vast gathering. As days passed, they observed thousands of warriors arriving in preparation for an impending battle. Then came the fateful morning when gunfire erupted at the edge of the village. Waterman and his companions rushed toward the commotion, seeing U.S. soldiers attempting to cross the Little Bighorn River to engage the warriors defending their land. Waterman quickly realized that the soldiers were heavily outnumbered. Despite their initial advance, they soon found themselves retreating to a ridge where they hastily dug shallow pits to use as cover. The warriors kept up relentless fire, pinning the soldiers down. The intensity of the clash increased as more gunfire erupted from the lower end of the village, a signal that another group of soldiers was approaching. The defenders swiftly moved to counter this new threat, forcing the soldiers to withdraw. Waterman watched as the soldiers retreated to the top of a hill, abandoning their horses in a desperate attempt to escape. Seizing the opportunity, the warriors quickly captured the horses, a sign of their victory. Some of the captured horses were gray, while others were sorrels, their coats gleaming in the sunlight. The Battle of Little Bighorn, known as Custer's Last Stand, became a symbol of native resistance against U.S. expansion. It was a decisive yet costly victory for the native forces, as the U.S. government soon intensified its efforts to subdue the tribes. The stories of warriors like Waterman provide a glimpse into this turbulent chapter of American history, reminding us of the enduring spirit and courage of the native peoples. The tale of Waterman's bravery is more than just a story of battle. It is a story of survival, kinship, and the unwavering bond between warriors who faced overwhelming odds. The Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Sioux warriors stood together, driven by a shared determination to protect their people, culture, and way of life. As Waterman concludes his story, he emphasizes the importance of passing these accounts to future generations, ensuring that the spirit of those who fought at Little Bighorn lives on. In the heat of battle, the remaining soldiers found themselves cornered, surrounded by the unyielding wave of native warriors. With no horses to escape on, they were trapped on foot atop the high ground, desperately defending their position. The warriors, led by Cheyenne Chief Two Moon, pressed on, determined not to let any soldier break free. In the chaos of the early charges, a respected Cheyenne leader named White Man Cripple, also known as Lame White Man, fell. His death was a significant loss for the Cheyennes, but Two Moon quickly took command, rallying his warriors and continuing the fight. Waterman, along with other native warriors, was initially positioned in a small gulch below the hill, but they soon surged forward, tightening the noose around the soldiers. The air was filled with gunfire, thick smoke, and deafening shouts. As Waterman recalls, the atmosphere was thick with both tension and gunpowder smoke, making it difficult to see clearly. Amid this chaos, one figure stood out: Crazy Horse, the legendary Sioux chief. He was fearless, riding closest to the soldiers and encouraging his warriors with relentless spirit. Despite the constant barrage of bullets aimed at him, Crazy Horse seemed untouchable, evading every shot. The warriors displayed remarkable skills, using shields and riding their horses at sharp angles to reduce the likelihood of being struck by bullets. They numbered in the thousands, and the soldiers were vastly outmatched. Some soldiers tried to escape toward the river, but all were intercepted by waiting warriors. The intensity of the battle reached its peak as the remaining soldiers attempted one final, desperate stand. Waterman remembers firing a single shot that brought down one soldier, an event he recounts without celebration, acknowledging the brutal nature of war. As the battle drew to a close, the warriors reached the top of the hill, finishing off the few soldiers who were still alive. Waterman describes the final moments vividly. He saw General Custer himself, dressed in buckskin, both coat and pants, kneeling on his hands and knees. Custer had been shot through the side, blood trickling from his mouth as he seemingly watched the surrounding chaos unfold. Near him were 4 other soldiers, all severely wounded and unable to fight. Most of the other soldiers lay dead on the ground, their bodies riddled with arrows. As more warriors closed in around Custer, Waterman lost sight of what happened next. When he later saw Custer's body again, it was surrounded by native warriors who were arguing over his distinctive buckskin clothing, each man wanting a piece as a trophy. Waterman doesn't know who ultimately claimed Custer's clothes, but the scene was one of confusion and tension. The battle concluded around midday, with the sun high overhead, signaling the end of one of the most significant confrontations in the history of the Great Plains. After the battle, native women crossed the river to begin removing clothes from the dead soldiers. Occasionally, one of the wounded soldiers would move slightly, causing the women to scatter in fear. Waterman didn't stay to witness the aftermath. Instead, he returned to camp across the river once the battlefield had quieted down. Waterman recalls the clothes he wore that day: beaded leggings, a breechcloth, a white shirt, and a large war bonnet. His face was painted with a mix of yellow and red, symbolizing both war and spiritual protection. Around his neck hung a deerskin medicine bag containing a sacred root, which he believed to be his personal medicine. Remarkably, he still carries that same medicine today, a symbol of continuity amidst the dramatic changes that have befallen his people. During the battle, there was a moment of tension between the Sioux and the Arapaho. Left Hand, one of Waterman's companions, mistakenly killed a Sioux warrior, believing him to be a scout for the U.S. troops. This act angered the Sioux, who viewed it as a betrayal. Waterman notes that contrary to later accounts by non-native historians, the native losses were relatively low, with only 6 Cheyenne and 6 Sioux killed. However, many more were wounded in the intense combat. That night, Waterman and his companions remained in the Sioux camp, wary of any further conflict. But as darkness fell the next evening, they decided to leave. Waterman, along with Yellow Eagle, Yellow Fly, Sage, and Left Hand, quietly slipped out of their camp. They mounted their ponies and rode through the night, keeping close to the base of the mountains, until they finally reached Fort Robinson. Reflecting on those days, Waterman sees a stark contrast between the past and present. The once abundant buffalo herds have disappeared, and the native peoples who roamed freely across the plains are now confined to reservations. Dependent on government aid, his people are impoverished, often struggling to find enough food to eat. Of the 5 Arapaho who fought at Little Bighorn, only Waterman and Left Hand remain, both old men now, awaiting their turn to join the spirits of their ancestors. In sharing this story, Waterman hopes to preserve the memory of what transpired at Little Bighorn, a moment when native warriors made their final stand in defense of their lands and way of life. As the last of his generation, Waterman recognizes the importance of passing down these stories, so that future generations may understand the resilience and spirit of the native peoples who fought for their freedom. The exact number of native casualties at the Battle of Little Bighorn has long been debated among historians and tribal communities. Estimates vary significantly, with some accounts suggesting that around 31 warriors were lost, including 7 Cheyenne and many Lakota. However, the true figure remains uncertain, partly due to conflicting accounts and the diverse names used among different tribes. Major Marcus Reno, one of the U.S. commanders, reported seeing 18 fallen warriors on the battlefield, but it's widely believed that many more were lost amid the confusion and chaos of that day. As Waterman and his companions quietly left the Sioux camp following the battle, he couldn't help but reflect on how drastically life had changed since the days of freedom and abundance. The once vast herds of buffalo that sustained the tribes had dwindled to mere memories, replaced by the hardships of reservation life. The open plains, once filled with the joyful laughter of the people, now seemed empty and forlorn. Despite the struggles that followed, the spirit of the native way of life remained resilient, though it felt distant in Waterman's later years. As he recounts his memories, the battle comes to life again, not just as a clash of arms, but as a moment of unity and brotherhood. He recalls the courage of his companions and the leaders like Crazy Horse, whose bravery still resonates with him today. For Waterman and others, the fight was not only about defending territory, but also protecting their families, culture, and way of life against overwhelming odds. Waterman's retelling of the Battle of Little Bighorn serves a greater purpose: to preserve the memory of the native warriors' struggles and triumphs, ensuring that future generations understand the immense challenges faced by their ancestors. His hope is that this first-hand account provides a new perspective on the events of the Great Sioux War of 1876, allowing viewers to grasp the personal sacrifices made during this pivotal time in history. Stay tuned for more stories like this, as we continue to explore first-hand accounts of key battles and the experiences of the people who lived through them. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more historical insights. I look forward to sharing more stories with you. Until next time, take care and remember the lessons of the past.